In a fast-paced world, every day brings new challenges and new opportunities. At Strayer University, we know a thing or two about getting and staying ahead of change. For over 130 years, we've been providing students like you with innovative tools and customized support, so you can find your way forward and always keep striving. Visit strayer.edu to learn more. Strayer University is certified to operate in Virginia by Chev and has many campuses, including at 2121 15th Street North in Arlington, Virginia.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hey y'all, I'm Taryn Finley, host of a new podcast from HuffPost called I Know That's Right. Each week, I'll be taking you on a ride where mainstream media and the depths of internet culture collide. Joined by a rotating cast of friends and guests, we'll be breaking down the weekly what's what and who's who of pop culture. You need a show that separates the mess from the stuff that makes you say, I know that's right? Don't worry, girl, I got you. Check out I Know That's Right, wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Welcome, guys, to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones. This episode is going to be about my favourite post-punk band and one of the most important bands, I reckon, in modern music. Much maligned, probably not on everyone's lips. Those that know understand. Those that don't, hopefully at the end of this episode, will have you reaching for your Spotify, Play, iTunes, and whoever you use to get your music and jumping and having a listen. So, as you would have seen by the title, it's Killing Joke. Now, I'll just a little bit of background to how I got into them before we move into the actual band itself. I was hanging out with a band called Ruptured Dog. In West London in the early 90s, so 91 I think. They were sort of the premier three-piece punk band, was playing in around that part of town. They played with bands like the Scissor Men. They played on stage at the Marquee with guys from to all sorts of different bands. Like I think GBH played with them. 999 were on the same bill. Yeah, it was a really interesting band. So I hope you've got your tea. I'm recording tonight on a really wet and miserable Tuesday night. Normally I record on a Monday during the day, but I had to work, so it's at night time. I've had a couple of gins. I've got a nice hot tea. I've got my digestive biscuits, and here we go. So I was hanging around with Killing Joke, and I was sort of just standing around drinking, and this girlfriend, a girlfriend of a friend of mine, came up to me and said, "Oh, you like punk?" And I'm like, "Well, of course, I'm at a punk gig." But anyway, she said, "Look, are you into Killing Joke?" And I at that time had never really heard them, and she gave me this cassette, like a Maxell or TDK blank that she'd recorded a couple of albums on. And had written across it in red biro Killing Joke, and gave it to me. And I thought, oh, whatever, problem. Listen to the gig. And at that time, like I am now, I'm never separated from my Walkman. So I had my cassette Walkman with me, and on the way home, it was a long trip home. I lived in North London, so from that part of London to where I lived was a good hour and a half back, and it was late. So I was on the night bus, and I'm listening to this Killing Joke cassette, and to say it changed me, like I say all the time, music changed me. It really did profoundly move me. Changed me, maybe not, but moved me, yes. I'd never heard anything so viscerally tribalistic and so wantonly aggressive as I had in this particular band. Now, the albums that she gave me were the first album, Killing Joke, the eponymous titled album, and So What, the second album. And not So What. Oh God, I'm so sorry, guys. I didn't mean So What. I meant to say. Hang on, I'll get back to that in a moment. Again, you could apologise. It's late on a Monday, and I've had a couple of gins, and my brain has gone somewhere. So I have made notes. Let me just quickly look. What's This For? That's what I meant. So What is by the Anti-Nowhere League. It was close. Anyway, yeah. So completely and utterly enamoured of their a three-piece band. I then got to see them in 1994 at the Astoria, a gig that Killing Joke, and I quote, have said, the greatest gig of all time. Now, that's Kerrang! And Kerrang! Have seen, there are people in that magazine that have seen every band. Maidens, Priests, you name it, they've been there. But they said that this gig was the greatest gig of all time. And you can get it on a live bootleg CD, like an official bootleg CD. And I highly recommend that you reach out and look for it. It's not on any streaming services I know of. You can listen to it on YouTube, I think. And any of my followers there can put it on and go, hey, he was there. I was there. And the thing about Killing Joke live is it's like being in a trance. It's so rhythmic and so tribalistic that it's not flowery million note guitar solos. It's just, it's as Geordie, the guitarist, says, he plays in augmented fourths and sevenths. He's got he has a bridge. He doesn't have a tremolo arm. He has a floating kind of bridge where he pushes down on his palm as he's playing a lot of harmonics, and he gets this rhythmic growl, this staccato that's just there's only one man like him. Anyway, that's what seeing Killing Joke is live is like. I saw Killing Joke again in 2008 in Sydney, and I don't remember much. All I remember is it starting and me being in this complete trance. It's just motion and music. I've never experienced anything like it before or after, and I never will again until I see them again. I really highly recommend, if you get a chance to see them live, do it. It's just outstanding. Now, they formed in 1978. Big Paul Ferguson, his name is, the drummer. He is in a band called Matt Stager. He met Jazz Coleman, the lead singer, who's from Cheltenham in Gloucestershire. They met in Notting Hill. It's where, in fact, side note, where I met my wife, or my now wife. So, and they met Coleman, who's a gifted musician. Briefly played keyboards in Matt Stager, and they sort of went, fuck this, let's go and join it was the sort of punk movement time, so they were looking to find something a bit different, and they placed an advert in Melody Maker and other music papers, and guitarist Geordie Walker, who's from Newcastle, he came and joined the band, and as I said, Kevin Walker is his real name. And then he joined, and then shortly after, bassist Youth, or Martin Glover, joined afterwards. And there was this, how do I say it? There was this sort of spate of, in the punk movement era, of amazing bass players. J.J. Brunel, Martin Glover, Jar Wobble, Glenn Matlock. Great bass players seemed to come out of that movement, and Youth was one of them. He was a good friend of Sid Vicious's. In fact, he was a little side note, when he was arrested once for taking a lot of illegal substances, walking down the high road, Kensington High Road, burning £5 notes. And when they arrested him, he stunk, and they took him into the prison, and they burnt his white jacket. Now that white jacket was the one that Sid wears in the video for My Way, and is on. And so you can imagine how distraught he was when that happened. They were very close, and of course, even worse when Sid died. But they defined this. They had this. They wanted their ethos for the band was to define the exquisite beauty of the atomic age in sound and form. That was their rally cry. They named themselves Killing Joke. If any of you have seen or are lovers of Monty Python, you'll know that there was a sketch where the English invent a joke so deadly that if it was spoken out loud, it would kill anyone that listened to it. And they use it in warfare, and they have to each speak bits of it in different words, because if they speak the whole sentence, they'll die. You can YouTube it again, guys, or if you're Monty Python fans, you can get it on Netflix and places like that. Brilliant. It's perfect for the kind of music they're playing. In September 79, shortly before they released their debut EP, Turn to Red, which is a dub-infused punk masterpiece, with the record label, the graphic artist Mike Coles did the art for them. They created their own label, Malicious Damage, with the debut single Nervous System off the EP. So these are very forward-thinking people, creating their own record labels. They soon then also went from that to different labels, to Ireland and to EMG and all these different labels. But they formed their own one using a sort of a mix of punk, funk, and dub reggae. And that dub comes from, those that understand music and understand the movement of the music in the late 70s and the punk, it was heavily driven by dub. Their very first ever gig was on August the 4th, 1979 at Brockworth in Whitcomb Lodge, supporting the Ruts and the Selector. That could not be more dub-infused if you tried. I absolutely adore the Ruts, and Babylon's Burning, and in fact their first album is so heavily dubbed, it's marvellous, and I love reggae. And Selector, of course, is a ska band, that played with the Specials and so on. Brilliant. Okay. They're a difficult band to categorize, and I don't think we should categorize them. People say they're like the Susie and the Banshees, but without the thrilling amoral imagination. I think that's a really weird way to put it. Jazz plays a lot of synth on a lot of these albums, so he's sort of keyboard driven. He's also written for the Prague Symphony. He's a very gifted musician. Side note, I was in a bar in in fact the same bar that I took my now wife to the first time we went on a date, or went that day, which is now I'm going to get this wrong, which was the Queen Anne on Notting Hill, in Ladbroke Grove, on where the market is, right, and Portobello Road. And I was there in my Killing Joke leather jacket and just minding my own business. You can see the picture in the little thumbnail, and this guy comes up to me, quite Arabic looking guy, because Jazz Coleman is of Arabic descent, and he goes, "Oh, it's my nephew's band. I haven't seen one of those jackets in years." I'm like, oh yeah, brilliant band. Chatting. And he said, "Well, do you want to come and meet Jazz? He's sleeping on my floor at the moment because he's over here." Because sort of towards the end of the 80s, Jazz and Geordie thought that the end of the world was coming. And so they went over to live in Iceland, because they thought that's where civilization should be. And he was over back in London recording, and he said, "Come meet me." And of course, I didn't. I chickened out. I was a 20-year-old. I was, now looking back, I'd go, "Yeah, I'll come along, I'll be there." But then I was young, and there was weird people around. It was London. You didn't talk to strangers. And I just bought the guy a drink and told him how much I loved his music, his nephew's music, and I went on my way. This mirrored itself in 2008 when I was asked to go to meet the band at after drinks party, and again didn't go because I was staying at a mate's house, and I didn't want to wake him up. He had young children. What an idiot. Anyway, that's the past. We all live in the past. So, several albums have come out. So they've released Killing Joke, which is their eponymous album, which Metallica have covered, The Weight on, and then the second album, What's This For? The first album is a picture of kids climbing over a graffitied wall. I think it's maybe the Berlin Wall. What's This For? It's got a dramatic image of. It was produced by Nick Lowney, who previously produced Public Image. It was quite. It had singles off the album like Follow the Leaders. It was quite controversial because it had the images of a German Alban. I'm going to say this wrong, guys. Poor Germans. Schallhelter walking through rows of Nazi brown shirts offering Hitler salutes, appearing to return the salute. It was later used for the cover of the band's compilation album I Nearly Bought One. I recommend trying that if you're new to the band. And then came Revelations, which was recorded in 1982 in Germany. It was more like a Kraftwerk sound. It got to 20 in the UK, peaked at 12. Members of the band, especially Coleman, had become immersed in the occult, particularly in the works of Aleister Crowley. And in February that year, Coleman with Walker following shortly after moved to Iceland, as I mentioned, because they thought of the apocalypse. It was not far after that Paul Raven joined the band once Youth decided to have a sabbatical and leave them. But that will come to that on the B side. I've come to the finish of this side here. I've got to have a cup of tea. And probably dunk my biscuits. That's not a euphemism, guys. I'm generally going to dunk my biscuits. And I think today I'm going to have a rather boring and fantastically mundane rich tea. Anyway, see you on the B-side, guys. Welcome back. We're talking about Killing Joke, one of the most influential and important bands in the history of modern music. Band that you may not have ever heard of, or not even considered of, or thought they were just some kind of punk band, or they invented basically the industrial metal sound. No Killing Joke, no Ministry. So Ministry fans out there, that's the truth. And other, obviously, Nine Inch Nails and so on. Metallica as well, to be fair, heavily influenced by them. As I said before, so Youth leaves the band, and in comes Paul Raven. Now, Paul Raven himself, a very interesting, mercurial character that I cannot find a lot on about, really, to be fair. Quite a heavy, tough nut, very powerful bass player. In fact, he plays bass on one of my favourite versions of the band's song Psych. And I'm going to ask you guys, when you can, either pause this, or go and listen to it. Listen for Psych. It's on Ha, and it's off also What's This For. The chorus, Nazi with a social degree, middle class hero with your eyes on me. I won't go any further because it's not very radio friendly, but Paul Ferguson's version of that, when he spits it out live, is second to none. It's actually my favourite Killing Joke song. Anyway, so he's with the band for a few years, records a few albums. He sadly, unfortunately, passes away in 2000. Hang on, sorry. No, I did. No, 2008 is when he died. He just fell asleep in his chair and didn't wake up. Bit like the same way, a lot of action musicians go at the moment. But anyway, sad to say, he released a few albums with the band. He was more of a live presence than a recording artist, to be honest. He sort of started with Fire Dances, and it had a single, Let's All Go to the Fire Dances. Now that was followed by the arrival of producer Chris Kimsey, who produced Marillion's Fugazi album. He once did say that they were the craziest band he'd ever produced. He also did work with Rolling Stone and Led Zeppelin, and they're crazy people, so let's face it, that's big accolades. He then went on to release an album called Nighttime, and that had singles 80s off of it, which is the classic. It's the one that Killing Joke was suing Nirvana for just before the sad demise of Kurt Cobain. And of course, once he died, the lawsuit was dropped. Whether they would have won, who knows? But 80s got into the charts at number 21 16 in the UK, number 5 in Europe, which is quite big in Europe. And it's the most radio-friendly of the albums. Now, I might have skipped a few albums here and there. Sorry, guys. I'm not going to go full album by album. Just sort of bits and pieces. The ones I like and ones I sort of think are more important. They then followed the album with Brighter Than 1,000 Suns, also produced by Kimsey. It's like the weakest album of the catalogue. It's overproduced. It's thin. They've released the singles off it, Sanity and Adorations. I actually really like Adorations. I've got a 3 7-inch book release of that. They released 3 singles in one little fold out. It was really cool. It just didn't quite make the top 40 in the UK. Number 70 the singles got to. It was restored in 2008 with a much more favourable mix. So listen for the 2008 mix. If you really want to do it, listen to the original print of it, then listen to the 80s. The 2008 print, released just before Raven died, I think, or maybe just after as a sort of tribute. It's just a bit... The band went from growling, infectious, dub-grooved, post-punk, political, how do I say? What's the word I'm thinking of? Paranormal, psychological, nightmarish of music, to this sort of vapid, bland 80s pop synth stuff that was sort of, if you like The Damned, if you remember how The Damned did Phantasmagoria, that sort of blandness that they were doing in the 80s to try and be relevant. And so, they sort of middled around with sort of recordings, and then they made Outside the Gate. Not an album I play, and I've got all the Killing Joke albums. It's not an album that I have played regularly. It's a bit too synth. Again, it was sort of rolling on from Brighter Than 1,000 Suns. It did very well, but they didn't tour it at all into support of the album, particularly in the States. They didn't even take it to America. So Virgin dropped the band after 2 months of being on their label because of just Coleman and Walker became embroiled in a lengthy legal battle to extricate themselves from the contract with EG, which was the label that they had joined to do Nighttime. And so it just got messy. There was a fantastic story, and I thought it was apocryphal, but it turns out to be quite real. Coleman is a very interesting character. Once he's on stage, you cannot take your eyes off him. He's truly mesmeric, and he's very profound and has a lot of profundity to him. And a reviewer at NME said something, I think it might be NME, could be Sounds, said something rather aggressive and unkind about him. So he turned up at the offices of NME on Waldorf Street, and he talked his way in, and got up to the desk of the said reporter, and tipped a bag of maggots and old meat all over his desk. Now, I thought that was apocryphal. I watched a documentary about the band only recently, and yes, the reviewer and Jazz both agreed that they did that. So, when someone's got that much passion, you've got to admire it. Did he do the right thing? Probably not. But hey, And then we come to the 1989-1991. Towards the end of 88, Coleman and Walker revived the band. And again with Martin Atkins on drum this time, because big Paul Ferguson on the left. Atkins had played for Public Image Limited. He'd also played at Marillion, but he had a drug issue and it didn't quite work out for both sets of bands. It was more of a subtle bass sound. Again, it was sort of it wasn't played by Raven. It was played by former Smiths member Andy Rourke. Then dismissed after only 3 days because he just didn't fit in. And then they got Welsh bass player Dave Taffy Ball and played their first gigs in almost 2 years in 1988, touring across the UK and Europe. Just touring their back catalogue. For reasons that remain unclear, German sessions were shelved. They were recording in Germany, and bass player Taff left the band. He was replaced by former member Paul Raven, who came back. Obviously had gone, and they released Extremities, Dirt, and Various Repressed Emotions. Typical Killing Joke like title. It's an album that is so heavy and so industrial that you probably need to replace the needle once you've played it. You probably have to, you probably can't pick the cassette up, it's that heavy. They released a single of it called Money Is Not Our God. What a single. Now, here's a story. I'm standing at a train station. It's Tottenham Court Road, I think, and there was a load of us Killing Joke fans, and we're all singing on the top of our voice the chorus to Money Is Not Our God. It was a spectacular moment. It was just one of those moments you will always relive. Look, Atkins and Walker and Raven went off to release a form band called Murder Inc. With Chris Connolly recruiting Ferguson as drummer. Try and get them and listen. They're on Spotify. They're on Apple iTunes. I give them a go just to understand where they went from there. It was a little bit more 90s sounding hard rock, but still really good. Okay, so 1994 onwards, Youth comes back. As I said, I saw the original lineup in 94 at the Astoria, the greatest gig in the history of music, according to Kerrang. And this is when they released the album Pandemonium. And this is when it becomes heavy metal, guys. Before, it's influencing heavy metal. Here, it's true metal, I think. They've really grabbed, because the original album had the singles War Dance and Requiem, which are, I sort of didn't talk about those, I sort of whizzed over them, but War Dance and Requiem are, they're the rallying cry of a new musical movement. That was basically only Killing Joke and a few other bands, but it's so rhythmic, so pounding, so heavy, so delicious. It's beautiful beyond words in some respects, that song, Killing Joke, and so is Requiem. In fact, my wife loves both those songs. But then they released Pandemonium. So they've all these albums in between with all these sort of different sounds. And then they released Pandemonium on Youth's Butterfly album. Now, Youth had gone on and formed the Orb. So those anyone who likes trance music will know the Orb. He came back and he was working on, and he released Pandemonium. And they used a drummer from Coleman had earlier produced Shehad's band, Shehad in 1993. So Tom Larkin from that band joined. He's a Kiwi. It was due to dispute over Coleman's producer's fee. Pandemonium also featured. So there was issues with the producer, but Pandemonium also produced. Had several musicians from Egypt on, and they recorded in the tomb, in one of the tombs in the Great Pyramid. They had a percussionist, sorry I'm going to say this wrong, probably Hossam Ramzi, and violinist Aboud Abdel Al, and earned Killing Joke a memorable Top of the Pops appearance for the first single Millennium, and that single again is infectious. You know, it has this infectious, heavy rhythm that just won't go away. It was the area that I came in, so I fell in love with the band then mainly because I saw them live then. I was buying the albums then. I had all the singles, clear vinyl, coloured vinyl, picture disc, cassette single, cassette CD single. You know, I name it, I had it. They also recorded a song for Hollywood Babylon for the show, the song Hollywood Babylon for Showgirls soundtrack by Paul Verhoeven. That I didn't know till doing the research, which is interesting. They had a follow-up album that came out after that, Democracy, which was released in 1996, produced by Youth again, had acoustic guitars on it. It was more explicitly political. The tracks were released in singles in the UK and top 40. Much of the singles did really well. Pandemonium and Democracy featured session drummer Jeff Dungmore, who also played live with the band during this era. So I didn't see Big Paul Ferguson play drums in '94. I obviously would have seen him. I would have said Nick Dungmore. I did see Big Paul Ferguson in Sydney. I think I did. May not have done. No, I didn't. It was a different drummer in Sydney. I apologise. So I've never actually seen it with a full lineup with Big Paul Ferguson, which is a shame. When they come out this time again, I definitely will see them. They went on a big hiatus after Democracy for a couple of years. They went to make soundtracks for Czech filmmakers, and I said Coleman did his Prague Symphony stuff. And when Raven died, they reformed. And they went on and they've released an album with Dave Grohl on drums. So those who love the Foo Fighters will love their second eponymous album that came out in 2002. They had some really big singles off it. Loose Cannon, Seeing Red. I mean, Loose Cannon is a brilliant live track. You know, I'm a loose cannon, whoa. It's just a really great live. And of course you had Coleman, Walker and Youth. Raven is also on the list of musicians on the line notes because he had written some of the stuff just before he died. And then again, it wasn't Big Paul Ferguson on this album, I don't believe. It was Andy Gill. Oh, Andy Gill produced it. Sorry, it was Big Paul Ferguson. Andy Gill produced it. I apologise. It wasn't Andy. You see what I'm saying? You know, it's late. Dave Grohl was on drums. Okay, and he's an immensely good drummer. I don't rate him particularly. I don't like Foo Fighters, don't do it for me. But I do love his drumming. And they come and toured in 2003 and 2004 with Prong's drummer Ted Parsons. That's who I saw them with. Okay, and they've consequently released a load of live DVDs. They released an album called Hosanna in the Basement of Hell, recorded in Hell Studios, and it is a little bit impenetrable for me. Loved the artwork, felt it was a little bit, because Coleman has this ability with his vocals, very much like a lot of older vocals. Sometimes it's clear and audible, and sometimes it's impenetrable. And I don't mind impenetrable vocals, but when his lyric is, he doesn't use rhyming couplets. He doesn't rhyme the second line with another line. His it's just staccato story, and you get what you get. And sometimes his vocal can be impenetrable, and I found that with Hosanna. I don't really play it a lot, but it is a really good album, and it's a good album for people that want to, that want to see them at their sort of darkest. I think this is when they're their darkest. They've subsequently released a few albums afterwards. You get Pylon, released in 2015, which is a big gap. But it's from 2003 to 2015. But it's not Pylon. You had MMX 2211 or 2022. I think that 2012. Sorry, apologise. My God, it's late. Which released some really interesting numbers. Firmacamp, Rapture, In Syntheria, which was a single, Primobile, Corporate Elect, a lot of political based sounds on that one. Again, I have that on vinyl, love it. And then they released probably their heaviest album of the later era, Pylon. I've got that in two versions now. I've got a green vinyl triple album, and I've got this one, the original release. But there was a song on it, I'm the Virus, War of Freedom, Euphoria. Oh God, when I'm running and I put that on, it's amazing. Autonomous Zone. I've got a triple vinyl of that in yellow, and it's a really great album. There's another one which eludes me slightly. Sorry, guys. Again, it's late, and it's left my head. The name of the album. Give me a second. See, I knew. 2010's Absolute Descent. It's quite a religious cover with a cross and in sort of Wi-Fi pylons on it. It was recorded in Prague on the Spinny Farm label. It was the first Killing Joke album to be released in America on vinyl. Interestingly enough, you'd think it wouldn't be. Regional lineup. It has tracks on it. Say Absolute Descent, Great Coal, Fresh Fever from the Skies, In Excelsis, great live album song. If you want a real hark back to their dub days in European superstate, there is the Raven King. So it released just after Raven died. I think it's a tribute to Raven. It's very heartfelt. It's beautiful. And again, back to their dub days, came as an EP from this album, Ghosts of Ladbroke Grove. It really, really bites into their early years, and it's a really nice album. I'm sorry I forgot it, and the reason I forget it was I wrote it down and it's on a different piece of paper. Anyway, that's Killing Joke in a nutshell, okay? I'm going to just quickly finish by saying that Geordie, Kevin Walker, uses a Gibson ES295 hollow body for guitar nerds out there, and that's how he gets his sound. No solos, just arrhythmic, atonal music. It's a beautiful guitar. Uses a wraparound trapeze bridge, as I mentioned before. So when you push down on the bridge, you get that vibration across the 6 strings. He uses a Berman Pro 2000 head to put into into his cabinet. I used to have a Berman Orbital Pro 2 head, and I blew that up on stage. Yes, rock and roll. It was because my brother decided to put transistors in to try, and so I wouldn't have to keep buying valves. And that particular night, we overloaded it with a Black Sabbath cover, I think, and took the head out. He has an interesting effects board. He has a Cascade preamp with 3 gains on it. He uses an ADT delay with a micro delay, and he uses an Electro Harmonics Deluxe Memory Max, which is like a harmony 2-tone sound. That's for your guitar nerds. It is. I have to say that because it is one of the greatest guitarists ever play. So if you get to listen to him and wonder what I'm talking about, that's the kind of sound he's getting. Anyway, that was my potted history of Killing Joke. If I keep you rundown of my favourite albums, it's going to be Killing Joke, the first album. It's going to be Nighttime, What's This For, the Killing Joke second self-titled album. I mean, this is just off the top of my head quickly, and I'd probably say Hosanna in... I'd say Absolute... What did I say? Oh my god. I'm so tired. Go Absolute Descent. Anyway, that's me for this week. It's a bit longer. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please go and get your ears around some Killing Joke and let me know what you think of it. Which album you listen to, but I'll probably start with the first one first. And be careful, because you might want to dance. They are danceable music. You need a space to listen to it. That's me for tonight. My tea's going cold. I've got to go downstairs now, but make another one. And I'll talk to you next week. Bye, guys.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hey y'all, I'm Taryn Finley, host of a new podcast from HuffPost called I Know That's Right. Each week, I'll be taking you on a ride where mainstream media and the depths of internet culture collide. Joined by a rotating cast of friends and guests, we'll be breaking down the weekly what's what and who's who of pop culture. You need a show that separates the mess from the stuff that makes you say, I know that's right? Don't worry, girl, I got you. Check out I Know That's Right wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.